This comes on the heels of the European Union finally moving to completely eliminate use of Russian oil and natural gas imports in a bid to further cut off funding of Russia's war machine. For more, let's bring in former Deputy National Security Advisor and the Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow, Victoria Coates. Victoria, it's great to see you. They've got their eye, Europe, on 2027, I believe, to cut off the natural gas imports. That would not be possible, none of this, without President Trump. With the reopening of permitting for liquefied natural gas terminals here in the United States. And it really does speak to Europe's seriousness about this. As these talks are ongoing, they're still moving forward to deprive Russia of financial resources.
Well, this is true, Dagan, but I would point out we're going to mark the 4th anniversary of this war in 2 months, and Europe is saying that they might be able to get off Russian gas by late 2027. The reason we were able to surge gas in 2022 was because of the first Trump term and the explosion of production of U.S. natural gas. I'm from Pennsylvania, so that's something we're very serious about. And so that was the surge that came in 22. Now there can be more, but the Europeans have to be more serious about this. I mean, it's 4 years in, and they're just getting to this?
Are they not getting it to because they're not writing big checks to keep this war going? What's the real issue?
Well, that's the problem, is that this war is in Europe. It is Europe's war, and they have, up until President Trump came back in, been perfectly happy to coast on the Biden administration's as much as it takes, as long as it takes, non-strategy. And that created a real culture of dependence. It was bad for the Ukrainians on top of everything else. Now, President Trump has finally put a plan on the table to get this war ended. Right. That's what has to happen. And, you know, he inherited it. He didn't create it. But he's the only person, I think, on the planet who might be able to end it.
But it goes to what we were going to ask you about, but because these are inextricably linked, these two issues of a reliance on Russian natural gas and oil, and also Europe's green energy, as they rushed to slash emissions, but it has crippled Europe's economy. That if you go through, and Steve Moore wrote about this earlier today, that the Europeans took a baby step away from this nonsense last month by agreeing to use more natural gas, but they're still wedded to the windmills and solar panels. And it is completely, if you look at electricity prices, they're through the roof, and it's just put their economies there in a stranglehold.
They're absolutely hemorrhaging industry at this point. Germany and the UK have electricity prices twice what ours are, and much more even than China's. And so you can't build anything. You can't manufacture anything in Europe anymore. And that has to change. And it is because of this forced transition. They weren't prepared for it. They don't use a lot of even the wind farms they've constructed because they would create spikes that their grids can't handle. So the whole thing was pointless and backwards. The president was talking about it today, the green scam, one of the biggest scams that's ever been perpetuated. Thank heavens we're getting out from under it with the sort of announcements he made today. But Europe has got to come along with us, or else they're just going to become, incredibly sick and unable to recover their economies.
Yeah, we obviously want to be sympathetic to rising costs in other countries, but we need to be more sympathetic to what's happening here. Americans are tired of hearing about this war, and they're tired of writing checks on and on and on. Where do you think the end is, and how far are we from it?
Well, the true end can come when the Europeans make good on those 5% pledges that they made in The Hague in April, because the good news about Europe, if there's good news, is they do have a $20 trillion GDP each year, which if you combine that with the United States, you're close to 50. If you're investing 5% of that in defense, Russia's what, 2 billion? They can't compete. Then this is over. And Russia knows they can't go into NATO under those circumstances. But we have to do the hard work that I know the president's doing. We're working on it at the Heritage Foundation to rebuild our military to be the most lethal fighting force in the world under Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. We can do that. Europe has to make good on their pledges too. We've got great countries, Poland, the Baltics. I just came back from Finland, our new NATO ally. They're spending at a great clip. They have to show the way, but Germany, France, and England have to follow.
I want to, before we go, I want to point out President Trump, because he's so plain spoken, and people, will argue about the way he expresses himself, but his language and also his posture gives it's kind of opened the world to reveal all that has been damaging to economies galore. So this climate change study that was in the prestigious journal Nature, it was just retracted. Did you see this? It projected a 62% decline in global economic output by 2100 because of climate change, and they had to retract it today.
It's all fake science. They've been cooking these numbers for years to suit whatever narrative they might have, whether it be cooling, warming. Sure, the climate is changing. It might change for the better, but we're going to have to get some more of these reports retracted.
I love it.
Thanks, Victoria.
Great to see you. Coming up,